So it's really looking and making sure that you're using your money in a way that will help you grow as an individual or as a couple. If you're married, I think it's so much harder once you're married because you both come from different backgrounds and different understandings of money. So how much I want to save versus how much my husband wants to save, or how much I think we need to have to retire versus how much he thinks we need to have to retire. If we're not talking about that, then I don't know how we get there. You know, I grew up in a family where I don't ever remember my parents talking about money.
Welcome to the Healthy Love and Money podcast. If you find money to be the number 1, 2, or even third largest source of stress in your relationship, then you're in the right place. Going beyond how to budget, invest, and do your taxes, we're going to explore financial intimacy. Discover how to talk with your partner about your shared financial life. Let's take the awkward and painful out of money conversations. Join me and hit follow to listen to weekly inspiring, healing, and motivating interviews with financial therapists, couples therapists, and financial planners, and so many more. Let's go on the journey of financial intimacy together. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Healthy Love and Money podcast. Today, it's my distinct honor to welcome Mary Lou Daly to the show. I'm very excited to have her on the show because she just joined me on the Healthy Love and Money team with over 15 years of technical financial planning background experience. Before that, she was a CPA and worked in large accounting firms. She has loads of knowledge about how people interact with wealth and money and financial strategies to help people manage their money well. That's why I'm so excited to have her on the team. She also has this growing passion and desire to learn client psychology and financial therapy. And she is just such a powerful addition to the team. Mary Lou, welcome to the show.
And thank you so much. I'm so excited, one, to be on the podcast today, and two, to be joining you on the path that you're traveling, helping individuals with a therapy-informed financial planning.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, you know, we met, I guess it's probably been over a year ago. You reached out kind of out of the blue and said, hey, can I just pick your brain about what you're doing? And I was like, okay, sure, let's have that conversation. And I'm curious, what stands out to you from that first conversation that we had?
Thinking that you probably thought I was crazy for reaching out to you. For me, it was really interesting to see your enthusiasm and your curiosity was really what piqued for me. And hearing you kept saying, oh, I'm so curious, or tell me more about. And I thought, he's really interested. He really wants to dive in and know this information and learn more. And so to me, that just excited me about what you offer and how you approach financial therapy and financial planning.
Yeah, well, they come together, and this is still relatively a new field to be bringing these different worlds together. And, you know, compliments to the firm that you worked for. You know, we've talked a lot about that. It sounds like you learned so much there, and you got to work with great clients that you really had successfully made it on the wealth journey. But you were ready. Absolutely. You were ready for a transition to something where you could work with clients that are still on that journey of trying to accumulate wealth and trying to get all the moving pieces together. And, you know, here at Healthy Love and Money, that's primarily who we're working with. Is we're working with great folks who have gotten stuck on the journey of building wealth. They may have some relational challenges. They may have some money hangups, fears, anxieties, but they also just need help technically knowing what to do. Should I put my money in a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA? Should I have my money invested this way or that way? And, you know, I've spent all this time in psychology and therapy and understanding, you know, kind of the emotional side of money. But the technical side of financial planning is just as important. And that's why I'm happy that we're going to be teaming up together to work with clients to support them on this journey. So I'm curious, when you think about financial planning and financial planning done well, what are some of those major elements that go into developing a good financial plan for folks?
So I really start, and so it's different in that I didn't see this in a lot of the couples that I worked with. They were kind of further along in their journey. A lot of them were retirement age. So they had learned the communication process, but there's so many individuals out there and couples out there that struggle to really talk about money.
Right, right.
And their parents didn't explain money to them. They didn't help them understand what they need to be doing to help build wealth and generate wealth. And so when I look at it, I think if I can help somebody within this space to help them better understand what they need to be looking at in ways of how can they start setting aside money for retirement. You know, I joke with everybody about the fact that I don't think any of us really want to work till the day we die.
Yeah.
And we want some flexibility in our lives. Like we want to be able to say at some point, maybe I don't want to do this job anymore. Maybe this is my money-making job. I really want to go do something that fills my heart and my soul.
Yeah.
And doesn't pay me as much. So to be able to do that, you've got to start setting money aside and paying attention to what your cash flow looks like, what debts you are taking on. I completely believe that there are some good debts that you can take on and that there are some not so good debts. So it's really looking and making sure that you're using your money in a way that will help you grow as an individual or as a couple. If you're married, I think it's so much harder once you're married because you both come from different backgrounds and different understandings of money. So how much I want to save versus how much my husband wants to save, or how much I think we need to have to retire versus how much he thinks we need to have to retire. If we're not talking about that, then I don't know how we get there. You know, I grew up in a family where I don't ever remember my parents talking about money. There weren't fights at the table, but there weren't even conversations at the table. You know, the only thing I remember was we had to cut coupons and go to the grocery store and use the coupons. And that's what that was my memory. You know, I won't say I was eavesdropping. I did have a one time when I overheard my parents. They were out on the porch.
Yeah.
But my older brother was in college and they were trying to figure out how to pay for school. And they ended up, I don't know whether they took out a home equity loan or whether they refinanced their first mortgage. Just didn't have that language at that point in time.
Right.
But I do know they were taking out money from the house to be able to pay for the college education because education was paramount for my parents, getting us to have a college education. So some of it is kind of taking what I learned growing up and what I've learned as a CPA and learned as a financial planner and trying to help listen to hear what people are needing help with financially and be able to give them some guidance with the hope that they can then come from a financial perspective, have flexibility or have wealth.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, you raised so many great points in all of this most of the clients, when I talk with them and I ask them, have you ever seen your parents talk about money openly in a loving way? And I've yet to have anyone raise their hand and say, yes, that was my family. At best, it's kind of that sitting around the kitchen table, seeing the coupons clipped, or, maybe you saw mom or dad, paying some bills. But now, I even wonder, with everything being so digitally focused, my kids never even see bills come into the house. I don't know that they even know that a bill so the digital shift, I think, is this whole other area of managing financial information that's brought up a lot for folks. It looks like you got some thoughts that are coming up. So I'm curious.
Well, sorry. What I was going to say is I think it makes it more complicated.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is, my father-in-law used to hate it that I didn't carry cash in my wallet. He was a cash man.
Yeah.
So when the cash is you physically have to give them the $20 bill.
Right.
If you're paying for something. And then when the cash is gone, it's gone. When I swipe a credit card, I have the object, but I have not tied it or related it to that money that then needs to go out. So you just don't, it's so easy to swipe or, tap, or I don't even carry credit cards anymore. I just carry my phone and I, hit the button on the side and Apple Pay comes up and I just tap and I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
So there's no physical or material piece of it anymore to help us better understand where our money is going. If you ever did the envelope method,
Sure.
you know exactly where your money was going because you had all those envelopes.
Yeah.
Much harder to do when it's electronic, I believe. There are some banks out there that
allow you to do it ish.
Bucket and that kind of stuff. But I still just think that you miss when we lose the tangible piece to it. It means that we have to use more effort, I think, in how we think about it and how we process it to understand the flow of our cash as it comes in and as it goes out so that we have a better understanding of what we have to work with.
Well, and I think to me, the word is our financial orientation. And what I mean that by is just, maybe it's financial awareness, is like, how much are we spending? How much are we spending in different areas of our life? And sometimes, as life is moving along, we have to recalibrate how much we're allocating to different areas of our life. And so if we don't have any mechanism or process in place to do that, we can feel kind of really lost in space and disoriented. And I think that's where a lot of the financial anxiety comes from, is I don't even really fully know how to track this stuff. Or if I do know how to track this stuff, when I look at the numbers, I get emotionally overwhelmed. It just feels like too much, or it feels like I can't do anything to change it. So why bother monitoring it? But we've been using Monarch Money at Healthy Love and Money for, I don't know, about 6 months or so. And clients on the whole are really enjoying it. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. It takes a little time to get it set up, but once it's going, and I've observed this is just, and I know it's true in my own life, is if I'm checking in once a week on Monarch Money, my spending actually goes down without doing anything. Just that financial awareness of where am I at in the month and how much is going on. And I think what a lot of folks get stuck in is between these ends of the continuum, like rigidly feeling like I have to adhere to, I have $500 for groceries, I have $200 for the kids, I have $100 for birthdays, or like there's no plan. But like on that rigid side, we kind of lose sight of the fact that you can rob Peter to pay Paul some, and it's okay. Right? Because it's really about, in total, how are we doing with how we're spending money, not in any one category. There's not the grocery police that are going to come and get mad at you for like, you spent too much on groceries this month.
No. And it's funny, I laugh because in my past, I have done some financial literacy training for college students and that sort of thing. And I used to really harp on, the $5 that you would spend at Starbucks on coffee.
You're one of those financial planners, are you? Formerly, at least.
These days, I really try and look at it because I've seen so many people that get overwhelmed by trying to figure all this out. I'm working with 2 people right now where really their preference is to kind of bury their head in the sand. What they'll tell me is they have a general idea. Of what's going on. And so what I've really tried to talk about, especially, I love Monarch. It's a great budgeting tool and I use it with individuals, but really trying to help them see kind of, all right, what are your fixed expenses? What are things that like have to go out the door? You don't really have control. They might not be $100 every time. It might be $110 next month and $105, but this has to go out the door.
Kind of like your electric or your gas, right? Like those are fixed. Like you're going to pay it no matter what. It's not going to be the exact same amount, but it will change. Yeah.
So if you can figure out what those fixed are, and then you can make sure that you're saving for yourself. And I kind of include that in that top piece. And then a lot of times I'll just say to individuals, okay, so if we've covered everything that must be covered.
Yeah.
And we've saved at a point where now we had to have had a little bit of idea of kind of what the numbers look like to do this, but we've saved what we want to be able to save. Then whatever's left over, you can go to Starbucks every day.
Right.
I don't care, but this is all you've got left to spend for the month.
Right.
So it's an option for individuals
Right.
of not every budgeting process is going to work for everybody.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
It's so there's, as you kind of said, there's kind of this continuum of, is it too much or is it too little? Where are you in the middle? But there's a big piece in the middle there of different ways
Yeah.
that you can do it. And so I am always trying to help individuals and couples figure out what way is going to work best for them.
Yeah.
My husband loves doing the QuickBooks thing. But, when he calls me over and says, hey, what's this charge? It's yours.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, maybe we need a date night, or we need to talk about this a little, some boundaries about when you're going to be asking me these, because it's just harder. I mean, my understanding is that the number one reason for divorce with couples is money. If we can help with that conversation, if we can help them better understand each other and their beliefs around money and how they understand money, then we can maybe try and get some overlap with that and find a path that they can walk together.
For sure. One, I was just preparing a blog post today, and I was doing some research on, does financial planning improve marriage quality or marriage satisfaction? And I came up on an article by some colleagues, actually. I recognize Dr. Sonia Luder, who's been on the podcast before, Dr. Emily Kuko, who's been on the podcast. She's with eMoney. Dr. Stu Heckman has not been on the podcast. Maybe he'll come on later. But all to say, what people don't know is at top American universities like Texas Tech, Kansas State, University of Georgia, and a number of other leading institutions, there's full college programs in financial planning for the undergraduate, master's, and doctoral level. And so the field of financial planning is becoming more and more like the field of medicine. There's degrees of knowledge and specialty. There's lots of scientific knowledge about what works to help people have better outcomes. And so that process or approach of how we're guiding people to do money is growing and maturing rapidly, with people researching and saying how we do financial planning, how we talk about it matters. And Mary Lou, you were alluding to this, and I really appreciate you saying is, your husband will get into QuickBooks and he'll holler over to you and be like, hey, what's this charge? And, I got the impression that you didn't love that particular approach, that you might rather him say like, hey, Mary Lou, can we set aside some time to talk about some of our spending and expenses? Is that a fair assumption?
That is a fair assumption. And that is an issue that we run into every once in a while. I did especially have to say to him at one point, okay, I shut down at 9:00 at night, and none of these conversations are legal conversations after 9:00 at night. Kind of thing. I'm like, I'm just calling a timeout here because this is not working for me. We've got to kind of stop this piece of it.
Yeah.
So so we have tried to kind of figure out some of that.
Well, I think those are the things that classically don't get talked about in financial planning books, right?
No.
It's and that's what here at Healthy Love and Money we're so focused on, is how to have healthy conversations around money with your partner. Right? Because that's a piece that doesn't get written about a lot in most of the finance world, and what to do when that communication's not going well. And it can be from mildly irritating things. I'm going to say it's mildly irritating. I hope it's not any more than that. But, to really severe control and manipulation around managing money. But there's a spectrum of the way that we relate to each other around money. And even if it's, just irritating, I don't know about you. I don't want to be irritated with my spouse any more than I have to be. So how do we figure out how to have empathy, compassion, curiosity, timing, boundaries? Just because you're ready to financially talk with me does not mean I'm ready to financially talk with you.
Yeah.
And so, these are important conversations for couples to be having.
It has been interesting to see the rise. When I was coming through, it was really kind of all about the numbers.
Yeah, right.
piece to it. And I feel like it's really just been kind of within the last, I don't know, what would you say, maybe 8 to 10 years, that the behavioral side of things has really kind of started to pop up. And I used to joke with individuals, I'm not really sure I think it's accurate anymore, but I used to say, you know what, everything you need that I tell you, you can find on the internet.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you can follow through with it.
Uh-huh.
And so to me, that's where kind of that behavioral piece comes in, better understanding your beliefs and your ideas around money, and how can we help you with those concepts. And because there's not a lot of education around money, because your parents don't tend to talk about it,
right?
It doesn't always mean that it's clear cut when you find it on the internet. You know, I mean, all of us can travel down rabbit holes and find, things that are confirming our biases already,
sure,
of what we believe. So I hope that my thought is that I'm bringing a voice to it that helps you better understand what you're seeing if you're reading things online, but then also wanting to pull in the behavioral side of things.
Well, and that's right. That's the piece that actually matters, is because we can come up with great financial recommendations for anyone. Absolutely. But if they're not in alignment with what works for that person, or they can't implement them, even when they say yes, then we have some deeper work to do. And this is where the therapy and the financial therapy can really come into play. Is we know from the field of therapy what it takes to help people make sustainable change. And the field of financial planning is rapidly catching on to this and recognizing like this becomes a part of an expanded set of responsibilities to our clients. Is our responsibility to our client is not just to come up with financial recommendations, but is to help you identify and articulate your goals, your values, the purpose for your life, and then to help you understand and make reasonable estimates about how much money it's going to take to fulfill that. And so that's kind of on the the positive growth side of things. But what we're doing here at Healthy Love and Money that's also really exciting is saying, well, sometimes people also have painful experiences around money that may stop them from being able to set their goals or maintain their goals or to imagine their future even. For some people, that's really hard.
Right. Some people, that's really hard.
You've seen this in your work over the years.
It's interesting because there are times, when you can talk to people and ask them kind of, what does your future look like for you? What are you thinking? How do you see yourself? You know, describe to me a day.
Yeah, right.
In your retired world. And they just don't, I get a lot of, I'm going to play golf kind of response. And I think, you might play some, but I don't know that you're going to play all day, every day, you know. And so I try and work with them, with clients these days. I really love kind of tapping into the values piece of it, just to almost give them kind of a financial statement of purpose. To help. I just think it helps. I think it helps solidify or helps them think more in the future. You know, what does your future look like? I've got some horrible pictures that I will not share of me aged 20 to 25 years, because I found that it's interesting that a lot of us can't envision what we're going to look like.
Right.
So then it's as though if I'm trying to plan for me and I don't know me 20 years from now, it's like I'm trying to plan for my neighbor next door. You know, I don't really know that I want to save for my neighbor next door. I might really rather go on this vacation instead.
Yeah.
But that if you can envision yourself and see yourself there, and sometimes visually it's helpful to be able to see what you might look like when you're older.
Yes.
To be able to project some of that. So I look a lot like one of my grandmothers. And so sometimes I'll pull up her picture and be like, this is going to be me instead of this, data adjusted image of what I might look like.
AI projected future self.
AI projected me in 20 years.
Mary Lou, I'm really glad that you bring this up, because I think listeners, I want you to really tune into this. This is part of, I think, what got me so interested in financial planning and financial therapy initially is, I had pretty strong, clear ideas about how much money I wanted and the type of life I wanted to live when I met my wife. I could not get her to articulate what she wanted 3 years, 5 years, 10 years in the road, it's still a little bit of a challenge. And so but for me, because I worked from this reverse engineering mindset, and it's well, if I want to do this and live this way, then this is how much it's going to cost, which back it in, that means this is how much we need to save per year. Oh, well, we're not saving enough. We better crank it up. Right. And that's a pretty kind of classic financial planning approach to things.
Yes, it is.
But that's not how a lot of humans work. There's a small segment of us. I'm going to misquote this research, but there's Michael Kitts is a thought leader in this field of financial planning. And I think it was just over a year ago at a conference, he said, we're financial planners are 2 standard deviations out on this future self orientation. And so what that means, listeners, is that financial planners are very future oriented individuals on the whole. They really think far into the future, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years into the future. That's not, air quote, normal. But if you're going to hire a financial planner, that's who you want, is someone that can start to think. And, having studied different spiritual traditions and life philosophies, I realized there's a really big push around living life present. Yes. Right? Tomorrow's not a guarantee. Yesterday has already happened. And so we also run into this issue as financial planners about life and time orientation. I know I won't speak for you, Mary Lou, but I have been obsessed about my future for too long. And sometimes I've missed out on just enjoying being present, because it creates anxiety. But I think, sometimes if we get overly focused just on the present, we will miss planning for our future needs, which many of us will end up in the future. And so, part of our job from my perspective as financial planners is to help us stretch that imagination into the future, especially when you're in an intimate relationship where one person's future oriented and the other one's present oriented. Finding that balance too is, oh man, that's a trick.
The balance, I think. And I feel yes, I frequently get hired to help people look into the future and to plan for the future. But I also understand that you need to be able to live life now.
Yeah.
And that's some of what I talk about with the flexibility piece.
Okay. Yeah.
My whole generation and my parents' generation, you worked the 80-hour work weeks when you were young, and you just keep plowing in and putting money away and saving money and putting money away for that time, those golden years.
Right.
When you're retired and all you're going to do is vacation and travel and
right.
Whatever it is you have in your image for what retirement looks like.
Right.
But sometimes you can put too much emphasis on that so that you're not enjoying or living today. So I think it's trying to figure out what that healthy balance is.
Yeah.
But what drives me a little is I see so many in my generation. You'll see the article headlines of, they've saved $25,000 for retirement.
Yes.
And I keep thinking, well, I can't even live on $25,000 in a year.
Right.
How are they going to live their whole retirement on that? And I understand they'll have Social Security, but so many individuals end up taking it early.
Right.
So that they have a reduced amount of Social Security. But I look at it and I think a lot of these individuals didn't have access to people who could help them better understand methods of saving. Really, I look at it as my role is trying to share this information with individuals to help them better understand how they think and how they interact with each other and around money, and how to help them have a healthy life with money so that when it comes time for them to take a year off or take a different job that they enjoy better, or God forbid they get sick.
Yep.
Life happens.
Oh, it does.
And when life happens, do you have something set aside for you to be able to help you through that time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, this is part of the challenge and the joy is listeners, I think, with great respect, is recognizing that there's a percentage of our population that becomes hyper focused on saving for the future and kind of almost independent of their financial starting point in life. They become oriented towards the future and saving. And so they accumulate and they're fine. And those are the clients that financial planners love working with. Love working.
Yes, they do what you tell them to.
Do what you tell them. You know, Mary Lou, when we were meeting, I was interviewing you to come join the team. You're like, yeah, all my clients, I tell them what to do and they do it. No problem. Questions asked. You know, like, look, Mary Lou, you know, I have this kind of, there's a part of me that's like suspicious and always worried like people are, I don't know, being controlling and abusive. Like there's some shady sides of the financial services industry. But that is not you. Obviously, I wouldn't bring you on the team if I thought that was you at all.
Thank you.
Right, because there's listeners. I'm sorry, I'm going away in a rabbit hole. I'm going to pull myself back from the rabbit hole. Come back from the rabbit hole. Be here. Is on the whole, financial planners really love working with people that have already accumulated assets that they can help with, or people that are already doing it very actively but need some guidance on what to do with their money. And if you're not in that position and you're hearing this, you're like, well, damn, that must be nice. But what I know is that's actually a much larger percentage of our population. That is, they have the capacity to save and be financially secure, but they need some extra guidance and support to get there. Especially in an intimate relationship, getting two people that are power savers together, really challenging. If you do, that's great. But if you're in a coupleship where one person's a power saver and an investor and the other person is not, man, it can feel like you're rowing the boat in a damn circle. Yeah. And that's not a lot of fun.
It's not fun, but I think that that's where the important work is to be done, is to help those couples with those conversations. It's one of the reasons, as you know, that will be starting graduate school in January for a certificate degree.
Yes.
But the degree's in behavioral financial planning and financial therapy, because I truly believe, even at my age, I can still learn.
Oh, heck yeah, you can.
But that it's so important for us to be able to help couples and individuals thinking through those processes of how they relate to money, what their money stories are, what their beliefs are around it. So exploring it to help them better understand and then be able to potentially make some changes around how they interact with money so that it will benefit them in the long run.
100%. When I think, you're highlighting something that we get to talk about a good bit on the podcast is money stories. And, in our little professional bubble, I feel like I hear about money stories all the time. But listeners, if you've been listening for a while, maybe you're tired of hearing about money stories, but you step outside of this little bubble, nobody's talking about money stories. And I had a very powerful experience in the last week or so where I met with an old couple or a client of mine from like 6-8 years ago. And he said, Ed, our life is fundamentally different because of you. We had to do our own work, but it's because of the conversations we had where you asked us about something called our money scripts, which are these flashpoint emotional experiences around money that tell us this is how money should be. But I'm thinking like there's probably a money script for you around couponing and the kitchen table.
That one, and I always go back to the debt piece of it.
Right.
For my brother's college, hearing that's a definite flashpoint for me that stands out in my memory.
Oh, I didn't even think of, yes, of course. Yeah. Right. And so I think the thing is that what Mary Lou and I know is everyone has a constellation or a set of these kind of financial flashpoints that turn into stories about myself, about other people, and about money. And so those stories can be productive with anxiety around them, right? In the sense like, wow, you probably are a really good saver, right? Because you felt maybe some sense of responsibility and some concern for mom and dad. And I learned the coupon, right? So a la CPA, CFP, right? But sometimes, and this is what I think perplexes so many people, you've raised a couple boys, I'm raising 3 boys, and I just introduced all 3 of them to Monopoly. And let me just say, their temperaments already were starting to show up in how they approach the game. And so kids don't interpret the same experience the same way.
No, they don't.
And so they end up looking very differently financially, even though they may come from the same family. And so this is one of those head scratchers for so many families. Like, well, I've got two kids that are like killing it financially and one kid that can't seem to hold two nickels. How did that happen?
I used to, when I was teaching, I used to explain to the college kids, I was trying to help relate to them. I'm like, yes, I have two boys. If I were to give them $20 at the beginning of the week, I have one son who is going to have the $20 at the end of the week because he's convinced all his friends to pay for everything during the week. And my other son is going to have no idea where the $20 went to because he's been paying for other people to do stuff.
He's been paying for like people like his brother.
Probably his brother for all I know. But yeah, I mean, it's just, one of them is just accumulating. And, that one was my child who was so excited his first year out of school where he saved like 40% of his salary, but he had like a ton of roommates. And, so, I mean, but he's all about the saving. And my younger one is all about helping others. So it's two different.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're 3 years apart, but there wasn't a lot of change I don't think, with how I raised them when it came to finances.
Right. Like in the sense that it's interesting. There's a couple layers of nuance that I want to draw attention to, not for your family specifically, but in light of this is sometimes families go through pretty significant financial changes over the course of their life. And I see this less when kids are like within 3 years of each other. But you start to get to 5 years or more, and like families go through very big financial changes, either upwards in wealth and income or sometimes downwards. And so the financial resources that were available for when you were 5 and when your sibling was 5 can be fundamentally different. And then we add in layers of like sibling position and what that means in the family. We add in gender dynamics and how the family interprets gender and responsibility. And then, inevitably, Mary Lou, I imagine as much as you probably try to love your boys equally and communicate that as clearly as possible, they did not feel that you loved them equally all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't. And we did have the financial up and downs, with the financial crisis, both 2007 and 2008. My husband lost his job twice.
Okay. Yeah.
We were in Florida. The recession hit there first.
Right.
He was let go there. We moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and he worked for a while. And then it kind of hit Charlotte and he was let go again. And that was for, I think, a little over a year, that second time that he was out of work. He only worked about 6 months in there in between. So they did see those pieces to it.
Right.
With it. I stayed at home for the most part when the kids were really young and then went back to work. I guess when my youngest was somewhere in elementary school, but we were able to make it work so that I could come home in the afternoons when they would get home from school. So I kind of worked school hours with it. But we had just moved to Charlotte and I was trying to get the kids settled before I started doing tax returns. And so plus it wasn't busy season with taxes then. So I kind of had that a little bit of period of time.
Yeah.
But we immediately as a family had to figure out what do we do? All of a sudden we're a no income family. How do we handle this?
Right.
And that's actually what got me into doing financial planning was I was trying to figure out, I had that expertise in tax. I was trying to figure out what's a wraparound? What's something that's similar in nature? And as you know, my dad was a preacher. My mom was a teacher. So there's a lot of that wanting to help people.
Right.
And I just happened to be on the board of a preschool with somebody who was a certified financial planner. And we went out and started having coffee together. So, I was in my mid 40s when I really officially transitioned into helping people as a certified financial planner.
Can I ask you this question? Because I think this is going to be really helpful for listeners to hear, because I feel like I run into this all the time, is people kind of conflate CPAs and financial planners because we both work with money. But the way that we're trained to think about money, from what I can tell, is very different. Like the focus areas are very different. And so the kind of guidance and advice that you're going to get will be very different from each professional. Would you say that's reasonably accurate or misguided? Or what would you want people to know about the difference in mentality between these two professionals?
That as a general statement, when you're doing taxes as a CPA, your goal is to minimize people's taxes as much as possible.
Sure. Right.
And so like, I would run into CPAs who wouldn't want to do Roth conversions where maybe it was really a good year to do a Roth conversion. So as a certified financial planner, I was trying to look more into the future.
Right.
So I think there's more of that future projection and building in other pieces to it, where on the tax side, when I was doing taxes, I was really more focusing on what does your tax return look like for this year.
And it's really in the context of this taxable year, right? We're not looking back what happened 4 or 5 years ago. Doesn't really matter.
No.
We're not looking at what your tax liability will be in 5 years. Don't really care. Can't control that. Not filing a tax return on that. So
yeah. Well, and it's trying to pay the least amount of tax. And so it's all right. I don't really know where tax rates are going to go, but I know what it is here. I want to keep you within this bracket of what we're doing. And there really wasn't any, it was all a lot of it was after the fact. So there wasn't really anything that I could impact or that I could help them think through. Every once in a while, somebody would come and ask me questions on maybe their restricted stock units or their stock options is kind of timing for
when to exercise.
Using those. And so, but it is really more of a here and now, at least what I was doing with individual clients. So I wasn't working with businesses, I was working with individuals. Right. And so it was really more of a here and now.
Okay.
And there wasn't any of they had already done stuff.
Right. They'd already.
So it wasn't that I was telling them to go do things.
Right. You were telling them.
They were bringing me, here's what I did.
And you're like, okay, here's the impact of you selling this stock and having the income this for this year and blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's what your tax liability is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that the other difference with it that I have seen as a financial planner is taxes are a piece of it.
Yes.
But there's a lot of other pieces that we need to look at to go with it.
Yeah.
The estate planning piece. Nobody really wants to think about their death. So can I convince them to think about what legacy they want to leave behind?
Right.
If you're a new young couple and you're recently married, all of a sudden there's a little bit more to the planning than there was when you were single.
Oh, yeah.
Or when the baby comes along. My son and daughter-in-law are expecting in February.
Congratulations.
My first granddaughter, my first grandchild is coming. I'm really excited. But that changes what their documents need to look like. And so rethinking through that, where I know individuals who are in their 50s who don't have documents written. And they take the approach of they're single, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm like, well, can we talk a little bit? So I do feel like with the financial planning, we're looking at estate documents. I read a lot of estate documents. I'm looking at life insurance policies. I'm talking about long-term care with individuals. I'm looking at investments and trying to make sure, I worked with a client that did really well, but entire portfolio in Apple stock.
Oh, no.
And I'm sure he's not very happy with me now that I convinced him to diversify, but had anything gone wrong with Apple?
Right. Well, and
we didn't know, but had anything gone wrong, kind of like the tech bubble. My dad lost a ton of money in the tech bubble. He lost probably half his portfolio because he was in tech. So I really look at, are you well diversified? Do you have the appropriate amount of stocks versus bonds? All of that's different than what there are a number of CPAs who have moved a little bit into this space.
Right. But it's not their deep knowledge necessarily.
It's not really their deep knowledge. And they're not approaching it with all of a sudden this behavioral side of things, of really trying to understand the driving behavior behind it.
I would be remiss, listeners. This is something that I think is so important. That's part of why I'm happy to have Mary Lou joining the team, right? Is at Healthy Love and Money, when we think about investing, we think about diversification. And because we have seen in clients and in our own family lives the real cost of being solely focused on an individual security. And what I want people to hear is, whether it's Apple today or some company we've never heard of 5 years from now, what we can be very sure of is Apple at some point will not be the Apple as we know it. There are very few great companies that stay great companies for 100 years. I can't name any. Right? When you study business history and you study the rise and falls of corporations, they don't last forever. And we don't know when their fall is going to go. And so there is part of the financial planner's mind is around growth, but the other side is about risk management. And what happens if you're overly concentrated in this one particular stock and it falls by 50% or more? Very few people can stomach that loss or live the consequences of that.
It can be a devastating loss.
To the point that you have to change your fundamental standard of living and expectations going forward.
Yeah.
So, Mary Lou, this has been such an incredible conversation. I'm so happy to have you joining the Healthy Love and Money team, and I can't wait.
I'm so excited.
So, listeners, you know what I'm going to say. If you've loved what Mary Lou is saying, and I'm so happy to say this because normally listeners, I'm telling you, go check out this person. They're wonderful. And everyone that comes on the podcast is fantastic. They provide great services. But now it's nice. You don't just have to come hang out with me in Healthy Love and Money. You have the choice to be able to work with Mary Lou also, which some of you might be like, oh, thank God, Ed, I was waiting for you to bring on another team member. Either way, we would love to work with you. If anything that we've talked about today is resonating, there'll be a calendar link below. And Mary Lou, any parting pieces of guidance or wisdom you'd love to share with folks?
No, all I really want to say is I am so excited about the opportunity to be able to work with individuals and to help them on their financial journey. It makes me happy. It gets me up and gets me moving during the day, and so excited about joining you on your quest to help others.
Thanks, Mary Lou. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I invite you now to stop for 5 or 10 minutes and reflect on what you just heard. Maybe even journal about it. Give yourself the time to consider what you just heard and what it means to you. By giving yourself the time to reflect and integrate what you just heard, it will help you along your journey of learning, healing, and growing towards financial intimacy in your life. Please like and follow this podcast and share with someone that would benefit from being on the journey of financial intimacy. Wishing you healthy love and money, Ed.